If you're looking to buy a stacked NBA 2K account with max badges and more, visit sportstmb.com. He has been in the community for years and has hundreds of reviews. Click the first link in the description to get your account today.
Before this video starts, if you enjoyed this video, there are many more like it already on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I'd really appreciate it. Also, I have two things to promote real quick. The new episode of the Hoopscast is out now. We went over some hypotheticals like which NBA player would win the Hunger Games. I'm very proud of this thumbnail. Which NBA players would we want to do a heist with? And we talked about the Rudy Gobert situation in Utah. So if you want to go check that out, the link will be in the description, both to YouTube and Spotify, because our episodes are now on Spotify. And one more thing, if you were a fan of my Timberwolves My GM series that I was uploading a few months ago, I'm starting a new My GM series with my extra free time on a second channel on the Atlanta Hawks. And episode 1 is out now. The link is going to be in the description, the pinned comment, and in the card above right now. I'm going to try and upload every Thursday and Sunday, the days that I'm uploading 2K talks, so look forward to them then, although I'm also probably going to be uploading episode 2 today or tomorrow. But with all that out of the way, as you can tell, I wanted to talk about Scottie Pippen today. The new Jordan/Bulls documentary came out on Sunday, and it was very fucking good, which I needed and I think all of us needed. And among the many things that people were talking about on Twitter during and after the two parts were out, one of the main talking points was Scottie Pippen, because there was a section of this documentary that specifically focused on Scottie Pippen, specifically focusing on his contract. This man signed a 7-year, $18 million deal, a contract that was so bad that the fucking owner, said he should not sign it. If the owner tells you not to sign a contract, you probably shouldn't sign the fucking contract. But what stemmed from all of this conversation around Pippen was how underrated he apparently is, which is something we have all heard in the sphere of NBA discussion for a long-ass time now. And I figured today would be a good time to point out why that is complete bullshit. Scottie Pippen is one of the greatest players ever, and he is unanimously recognized as that, and yet somehow people have the nerve to constantly call the man underrated. Let's talk about it. First of all, I would just like to point out that I don't really have any biases here. If you know me, you know that I am a Bulls fan. I like Scottie Pippen. And no, this isn't me trying to uplift Jordan's legacy by talking down on Scottie Pippen, though I may do that in the process. As for the argument about the level of help between Jordan and LeBron, I would say the consistency that Jordan had in Pippen for an entire decade was overall around equal to the inconsistent help that LeBron had. Jordan consistently had Pippen as a reliable source of help for an entire decade plus, while LeBron had peaks and valleys, like the peak of Dwayne Wade and Anthony Davis, but the valley of Mo Williams being the best player on his team. I would say that Wade and Anthony Davis were overall better help than Scottie Pippen. However, one, AD's only been there for 1 year, and two, the lower ends of LeBron's help has definitely been there as well. So I think it kind of evens out, maybe even plays a little bit more favorably towards Jordan. So no, this isn't my attempt to place Jordan as the GOAT because Scottie Pippen just wasn't all that he's hyped up to be. Jordan is already the GOAT on his own without that, don't at me. So I'm a Bulls fan, I like Scottie Pippen, and I don't think this really boosts Jordan's legacy. Also, I do want to say there is a reason that the title is what it is. I do not believe that Scottie Pippen is overrated. I just think he isn't underrated. He's properly rated for the most part. He is almost unanimously in people's top 50 lists, somewhere between 30 and 50, which is where he should be. In the top 50 list that I drop, I put him at 40, which is honestly on the low end. But that's roughly where he should be in my opinion. Between 32 to 45 is around the range he should be. The problem with Scottie Pippen and the notions around him is that many people view him to be more than just a great supporting piece to Michael Jordan. He wasn't. To prove that real quick, let's take a look at Scottie Pippen's game to see where he succeeded and where he failed. First of all, he was an amazing defensive player. I don't know if you knew that or not. He was 6'7" to 6'8" with a long wingspan. He was supremely athletic, fast as hell. He could jump out of the gym, so physically he had all the tools, and then he took those tools and paired them with an incredible defensive IQ in order to become the greatest defensive wing ever. He was also a good rebounder, and then on offense, he was a really good passer. Not an out-of-this-world passer, but certainly well above average. He had good vision and he made passes pretty routinely that most players were not capable of making. He was around 6 assists per game for his prime, and at his peak in 1992, he averaged 7 assists a game. And then scoring-wise, he was a capable shooter, decent enough ball handler, good finisher, and he was arguably more freakish than even MJ on the fast break. But offensively, that was about it. He could hit a mid-range jumper here or there. His percentage was not good, but it wasn't awful. He could post up, especially on a switch. But in general, Scottie's half-court offense was well below average for someone on his level of talent. And this is the biggest issue with Scottie Pippen as a player, and my biggest issue with people viewing him as underrated. Because people like to look at Scottie like this. Oh, well, if MJ wasn't there, he would be a bona fide superstar and a top 25 player of all time. He could have led his team to a championship as long as he had proper help. And I completely disagree with that notion. The biggest case for that being potentially true is the '94 season that Scottie Pippen had. But it is also often blown well out of proportion. Scottie in the '94 season averaged 22 points, 9 rebounds, 5.5 assists, nearly 3 steals, and he did so shooting 59% from the field and 32% from 3. This season, as I would hope you would know if you are watching this, Jordan was not playing. He was busy sucking at baseball. So Scottie was the number one guy, and as the number one guy, Pippen led the team to 55 wins after the champion '93 Bulls won just 57 games with Michael Jordan. So looking at this at face value, Pippen had a great season as a first option. But one, that season was not as amazing for Scottie as people make it out to be. And two, and I'd argue more importantly, in the following season, it did not go this well, not even close, and yet it is often ignored. So let's look at this season because it is basically the crutch of the argument that Scottie Pippen is underrated. This season is often presented as a one-man carry job, which it was not. Both BJ Armstrong and Horace Grant were really good this year. Now, BJ was probably the worst all-star selection in NBA history, but he was still good. Very often I see people mention that, basically acting like he was a bad player, like he shouldn't have made the all-star team, but he was still very good. And Grant's impact on both ends of the court often went well understated, but we'll talk about that in a second. This was a solid core around Scottie Pippen. Not amazing, not bad, so fair enough. He led the solid team to 55 wins. But what did he do after that? Well, come playoff time, Scottie failed under pressure. So often the fact that this Bulls team made it to 7 games in the second round is presented as a positive on Scottie's part, but in that series, the Bulls made it to 7 games in spite of Scottie Pippen, not because he carried them or anything close to that. For the series, both BJ Armstrong and Horace Grant brought in 17 points per game on really good shooting splits, while Scottie brought in 20 points, but he shot 40% from the field, which for a 6'8" athletic wing is flat out unacceptable for the level of talent people claim him to be. In Game 7, Pippen went 8 for 22 from the field. I was going to point out the turnovers that he averaged in this series of 3.2, but then I realized he also averaged 3.2 turnovers in the regular season, which, if you didn't know, is a lot. What I might get in rebuttal to that is, well, Scottie was doing it on his own. And two things. No, he wasn't. BJ Armstrong and Horace Grant were both very good players that were contributing just as much, if not more, than Scottie in that series. And even if he was carrying this team, which he wasn't, what is it then? Is Scottie this superstar player that can just be a complete beast and lead a team, or was he just a great supporting piece miscast in a role? You can't have both. Now let's look at the 1995 Bulls. So much about this team is overlooked because at the end of the season, Michael Jordan came back for the last 17 games, and what that overshadowed was a whole lot of mediocrity. The Bulls pre-Jordan coming back had a 33-32 record, which was just above 500, which would have put them as the 8th seed in the East that year, assuming that they maintained that 500 win percentage, which might not have happened with there being 2 games against the Pacers, 2 against the Knicks, and 1 versus the Magic that would eventually beat them in the first round in the last 17 games. Jordan came in and the Bulls went 13-4 to close the year. So second-year Pippen as the #1 option did not go well. As for what may have contributed to this, well, Horace Grant was no longer on the team. Suddenly you pull one really good player from that team and they're mediocre. I wonder why that is. And yes, the 94 season does pull in favor of Scottie Pippen, however the 95 season does not. So I'd say it evens out and it's really neutral on whether or not he could be that guy. But for whatever reason, people who say Scottie is overrated look at that 94 season and just completely ignore that 95 season. Well, I guess I shouldn't say for whatever reason, because the reason is they know it makes him look bad. And looking at that playoff performance in 1994, that really started a trend of poor performance for the entirety of the next Bulls three-peat. In 96, 97, and 98, Pippen played in the playoffs, averaging a grand total of 17 points on 41% shooting and 29% from 3. And this isn't some cherry-picked bullshit. This is a 3-year three-peat run with 58 total games played where the guy shot horribly from the field. Regular season for Pippen, by the way, in those years, he averaged 20 on 46.4% shooting from the field and 36% from 3, doing so on 3 less minutes per game. Now, this is not to say that Scottie was a bad player in the playoffs. My point is he just was not really a scorer to begin with, and doing that in the playoffs proves that. What I do find funny is that it is mostly older NBA fans who claim that Scottie was very underrated, that and LeBron fans who want to make MJ look like he got carried. But it's those same old NBA fans who put such an emphasis on clutch gene and killer instinct, even though Scottie Pippen himself said that he did not have those things and he routinely underperformed in the playoffs. Scottie Pippen was not a good scorer, or at the very least, he wasn't in comparison to the level of player he is frequently said to be. Many people just look at the box score and say, well, he was a pretty good scorer. For his prime, he averaged 19 points on 49% shooting. Those are good numbers. But all box score numbers are not created equal. Andrea Bargnani had a season where he scored 21 points on 45% shooting. Hakeem in 1992 averaged 20 points on just 5% better shooting. Is Bargnani as good of a scorer as Hakeem? Isaiah Thomas in 2017 was not as good of a scorer as Kyrie Irving even that year. Even if he put up better numbers, Elgin Baylor is not a better scorer than Kevin Durant, even though at his peak he averaged 35 points per game. There are guys like Mike Dunleavy, guys like JJ Redick, who average nearly 20 as role players. That doesn't make them good scorers. Scottie is a good scorer like Jaylen Brown is a good scorer, which is to say, he was fine. Which is perfectly adequate for a guy who is the second best player on 2 three-peat teams, but not fine for a guy being the first option. Scottie Pippen is not underrated. He did not have the superstar lead option abilities that it suggested that he did. He was a phenomenal complementary piece to a guy who helped him win 6 championships, and I don't know why that isn't enough. He has managed to make it as high as top 25 in some people's all-time lists, as a guy who never won a championship as the main option. I don't think you can get any higher all-time without having that accolade or the potential of having it. How he is viewed as underrated when that is a common occurrence is beyond me. Scottie Pippen was not underrated. If you are interested in that My GM series, again, the links will be in the description, and I'm going to be posting episode 2 today or tomorrow. But that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.